It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. I'm coming on this very snowy evening, and just to reiterate, please sign in if you haven't signed in already. We've got sheets over there, so we can keep in contact with everybody. If you haven't done it before the meeting, please do it afterwards. We'd just like to keep track of everybody who's been at the meeting. My name is Andrea Barlow. I'm principal with NES, and NES are land planning and landscape architects based in Colorado Springs. We are the party responsible for preparing the plans. We have our client is the landowner, so there's no developer at this point. He's the landowner. And I'm going to have a little brief presentation and just go back into a bit of the history. Out of curiosity, how many people here were present at the neighbourhood meetings we had in 2015 regarding the previous plans? So we have a few, maybe half a dozen. Okay, so some of this will be providing new information to the rest of the folks here. Okay, can we have our... So you're obviously all familiar with where the location is. Jackson Creek Parkway runs right through the middle of this property. We have Highway 105 across the northern boundary, and then I-25 on the west, and the I-25 off-ramp forming the western boundary, and then the eastern boundary is adjacent to the existing development as part of to the east there. So next slide. Just a bit closer in proximity, we have the YMCA down here, a vacant parcel. This parcel is not part of this property, and this remaining area is 84 acres, which is owned by Pine Properties, and they are the landowner and have been the landowner since the 80s. And I think clearly full neighbours are familiar with the area. I won't go into too much. We might come back to that if we're talking about some broader matters. So, next slide. Okay, so just a brief oversight of what's there right now. So as I said, the owners of Pine Tree Properties, it's just short of 84 acres. I think what's important to note is that this parcel is zoned PCD, which is planned commercial development. So it's been zoned for commercial development for many, many years. And one of the reasons we are here is because our client has tried and marketed it for commercial development through those years and has not had any particular interest in it, and I'll go into that a bit more detail. We're looking to rezone it to PD, which is the same zoning as the properties to the east. PD is just more of a general planned development where we can identify different types of uses, a mix of uses, and the town are moving away from the PCD zoning anyway. So next slide. These are just some viewpoints that we've got a couple of panoramas which I'll come on to next, but here's just showing there is the property is relatively flat if you're familiar with it. It does slope down flat to the highway. There is a berm along the highway. There is kind of a berm which is raised up about 20 feet on the 105 edge. Just native grasslands. There's probably, well, I'm pretty sure there are some noxious weeds in there, all of which through development will get cleaned up and managed. Let's move forward. So moving on to the next slide.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
What rest of the black arrows up there like that?
So these black arrows are panorama views, which are going to be in the next two slides. So this is panorama one. So that was from the one at the top corner. This is looking at the site from the residential area. So where you said the house you owned up, looking over towards Front Range, you've got Mount Herman there, and just showing generally across the site, and showing that there's not much topography on the property. And then the next slide, this is taken from the on-ramp going south on I-25 looking back to the property. Now there you can see the berm adjacent to I-25 and the on-ramp. And that's one of the challenges with this site. It really doesn't have, unlike Monument Marketplace, which is very visible from the highway, the visibility of this site from the highway is not really, apart from the first section and the south section nearest to the YMCA. Once you start getting on the highway and on the on-ramp, the site loses visibility, which loses its attractiveness for commercial development. So I just want to presented in 2015. It was all residential. We went through a couple of neighbourhood meetings at that time, and we had one plan when we started, and I know this is going to come up, so I'm going to discuss how we got to where we were. That had a straight shot connection of Norwood to Jackson Creek Parkway. The town, the fire department want us to have connectivity. They believe that having communities that connect to one another is better for safety, access, and so on. But the neighbours were very clear that they didn't want a straight shot through to Jackson Creek Parkway because they were concerned about traffic cutting through the neighbourhood if they wanted to avoid the light. So we came forward with this plan, and it's pretty much what we're showing now, except we've been asked to provide, so both these streets, White Marble and Norwood, terminate at the property boundary. So they were always planned to go into this property. And so we're showing arrows here and there, but our plan is that these won't be a direct connection. And we've even, we'll come on to that with the new plans, but the intent was always that they will be a circuitous link through the property and designed in a way that would discourage that cut-through traffic. And so our previous plans, we had similar ranges. We had a 14-acre area, multi-family, townhomes, duplexes, single-family, and a parking in the bottom corner, and a parking centre. So it was a much more generic plan. We've actually tried to provide in. Yes.
I have a question. It says DPU/AC.
Yes, that's dwelling units per acre.
Okay,
So that's a density range.
So you're looking to build 3.5 to 5 houses there?
No, 3.5 to 5 houses per acre. So just for example, this parcel is 30 acres.
That's a lot of houses.
And with 3.5 to 5, and the number of range of units is 105 to 150 within that density range. And over here, the densities are higher. So but this is the old plan, so let's not focus too much on this.
Yeah, we couldn't read it. We couldn't read it on the letter. It was
Yeah,
so
and I had
small.
somebody email me, or actually, email me and ask me to send out a PDF, and that's why we bought copies. So please take those copies, and we can accumulate an email list and send out a PDF of the plan and any changes that may occur. So, but one thing you'll notice on here, we have no commercial whatsoever. So this project went to Planning Commission. It got approved at Planning Commission. We went to the board. We actually had 2 hearings at the board, and it got denied at the Board of Trustees, primarily because of the loss of the commercial land. The Board of Trustees wanted to see this to be commercial development to generate commercial sales tax for the town. This was despite information that we submitted, and we are submitting an update of this economic analysis saying that really this is not going to be all commercial. It's not viable. There's not enough homes, as we say, in Monument to support another 84 acres of commercial land, with Monument Marketplace still not fully developed, other areas in the town coming forward with commercial development. You should be supporting the downtown, not trying to put more commercial here. But those arguments weren't successful, so we kind of just sat on it for a few years. My client did, try to work out how we're going to move forward. And we had multiple meetings with town staff and the new town manager, and talked about how we can approach this in a way that would provide a compromise between what we had initially and something that would maybe bring some commercial forward that the town would appreciate. So if you go to the next slide. So this is our plan now. It looks a little different. A few things I want to point out. We still have different types of residential. We split this up to have slightly lower density residential on this side, higher towards Jackson Creek. You can see we put a park in the middle here. We're showing these access points. We're not going to have a road right through the park, so we try to really kind of break that up, have a central park area for the residential, and then a buffer on this south side and a much lower density on this southern portion because there are larger lots in the county on the south boundary, so we've tried to kind of match the density that's adjacent as we've gone through on this east side. When we get to the west side, we still have slightly less, I think, multifamily. Yeah, we're down from 14 to 12.7 acres of multifamily along here, and then again a mix of residential development here. And this red area is going to be the commercial node, so kind of like a neighborhood center type uses, maybe some service uses, maybe some medical offices, that sort of thing. And that's initially what we went forward with. The town came back and said, I think you need a little bit more commercial. And so this blue area was our kind of compromise on that, where we've identified that as a mixed use area. So where we can get a mix of residential with commercial or offices and that kind of mix of different uses. So as a result, we've got about 10 acres in here that would be for more of a commercial and with a bit of mix of residential in there as well. The other thing we were asked to do, instead of, you may recall in the previous plan we kind of had a centralised park here, we were asked to provide more of a trail corridor with little nodes of activity, which we felt went well with the intent of the commercial and the mixed use. So it's a little bit more of a nuanced, I would say, sketch plan, whereas the previous one was just a little area here, area there. We've actually, I would say, given this one a little bit more thought and tried to address the objectives of the town in terms of providing that trail connectivity and also providing some commercial. So, in terms of the overall number of units here, it's not set in stone. These density ranges are general ranges. We find when we do these master plans, we rarely will be hitting the top of that range because once you get streets in there and other landscape buffers and setbacks and so on, you really tend to hit more of the middle of that range and actually in some cases more the lower half of that range. So we can't be very precise on the number of units, but this just gives an approximation of where we think it's going to be. But it is 84 acres, it is a big property, so yes, the numbers are going to be probably in that 550 range. Obviously the multifamily, which could be apartments, that would be the maximizing out that multifamily area in terms of the density. It could also be townhomes. Anything that's 3 or more units attached is considered multifamily. So it could be a range of different things in there. So we really don't know what product type is going to go into any of these areas. We've just provided what we feel to be appropriate density transitions and also providing enough flexibility that we're not kind of tied into too much detail at this stage. Same with the commercial, we're just identifying this area as suitable for commercial, office, service uses, and without getting down into any particular type of use. That we will be nailing down when we get to the next stage in the process. So the sketch plan is what accompanies the rezone. So we're rezoning this, we're doing the sketch plan, it's a 30,000 foot view of what might happen. The next stage will be a preliminary plan, or a preliminary and final plan. So the two stages are a preliminary plan and a final plan with a plat. The preliminary and final can be combined if we have enough information at that point. But that will get down in much more detail on the layout of the development, on the uses of the commercial, and so on and so forth. So this is really just this 30,000 foot view of what we are looking at. So the next slide, please. Okay, so I know a lot of people are concerned about Jackson Creek Parkway, what's going to happen with that road. So we have a traffic study that we submitted with this project. It has very general kind of recommendations at this point, with an acknowledgement that, in particular with regard to access points, where the access points are going to be, whether they need traffic, whether they trigger warrants for traffic signals, whether, and it's been suggested by certain people within the town that maybe roundabouts would be a better solution. All that needs to be analysed in more detail when we come in with the actual detailed plans and know exactly how much traffic is likely to be generated on the road. But the plan for Jackson Creek Parkway, because the right-of-way is very wide, is that it ultimately, this is the ultimate cross-section that's planned for Jackson Creek. It's a 4-lane road with a centre median and bike lanes with sidewalks. So that is the ultimate plan for Jackson Creek Parkway. We've had many discussions with the town. The town are applying for funding to pay for that, partially pay for the design, not only the design and engineering of that road, but also the construction. But this developer, well, could be the developer or the landowner, some combination of the two, understands that they have an obligation to make a contribution towards that construction and design commensurate with the traffic that they are likely to put on that road. Bearing in mind, there's a lot of traffic already on Jackson Creek Parkway that has nothing to do with this development, but then this development will be putting more traffic on, so an appropriate proportion. Yes, sir?
The Jackson Parkway north of the Y,
Yes.
it's only 2 lanes now.
Yes.
Do you have any insight in terms of the timeline for extending that to 4 lanes? Or
No,
will
so
that happen?
this is kind of what, so this is the plan.
Yeah.
This is the plan cross-section, and the timing will depend on funding, and there will be required road improvements if the funding, if, for example, this development wants to progress to its first phase, and the funding isn't in place to develop the entire cross-section of Jackson Creek from, basically from Higbee to 105, then interim improvements will be necessary, so whatever will be required to support that development. So, for example, the traffic study refers to the need for a dedicated right turn off 105 onto Jackson Creek. So things like that may come forward sooner than the overall widening of Jackson Creek. But I would say it's going to be a combined effort between the town securing local funding from Pikes Peak area government who give funding to local government organisations for roads, state funding, federal funding. I know they're attacking all those potential sources.
In your experience in working through these kinds of scenarios, can you postulate what a possible timeline would be? Is that the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
It is difficult to say. So one of the challenges is that it's rarely the case that a road goes in before development goes in, which I know everybody would love, but the developers usually pay for the infrastructure, so they only pay for it to go in as it's needed. And so it is an incremental, progressive thing. So this project is pretty big. So in itself, it's probably going to be a 5 to 10 year build out. And as you're probably aware, the economy has a big say in what happens. So there are a lot of projects that just in 2008 were just shelved and just sat around for a long time. I can give you a local example of Sanctuary Point. That was planned back in 2006. It really wasn't until 2014-15 that it picked up again, and now it's got into its last phases of development. So an economic crash could change that completely. But a reasonable would be 5 to 10 years.
Since we're still on Jackson Parkway, if I may.
Yeah, sorry, there's other people behind you.
I understand.
Go ahead.
Since that road now has been improved south of the Y,
Yes.
there's obviously a developer involved. Any notion as to what type of development is going to be there?
So the south of Higbee? So I understand that that was funded by TriView. Sorry, this is Debbie Flynn at the Frontier. She's with the Town and Monument.
The Town and Monument, yeah.
Very recently with the Town and Monument. So, but she can clarify that they are applying for the funding, but south of Higbee Road is in TriView Metro District. So they paid for the widening, along with developer contributions and because they get a portion of the sales tax in that area. So they funded and implemented those improvements. whereas north of Higby, it's actually in the town of Monument, so that's in their wheelhouse to deal with. So gentlemen at the back there and at the back there.
With the planned community this large, with the number of homes that you're looking at bringing in, the number of families, and with the strain that's already on the school district in Monument, what plans would be made accommodated to relieve the strain that's on the schools?
Okay, I can answer that. So when we went through this in 2015, we actually were in discussions with the school district about a potential school on this property. They have since done their strategic plan. I don't know whether you all were involved in that. There were multiple community meetings, but they now have their strategic plan where they're saying that they have these particular locations where they want their schools. So Willow Springs is provided, Willow Springs / Forest Lakes, school site there. Bear Creek, I think, was being upgraded or downgraded, I can't remember, but there were some changes there. And so the school district has reviewed these plans because this has already been submitted to the town and gone through a preliminary review. And they do not want a school site in this situation. They have the choice of asking for land or fees. So they have indicated in their letter that they want fees in lieu of land. So for every residential unit that goes on this property, and it varies depending on whether it's single family or multi-family, got this information here, so it ranges in terms of, if it's a single family detached unit, a contribution has to be made of $1,350, down to multi-family, which is about $300. So per unit, that money is collected and it goes to the school district when a builder pulls a building permit. So they collect it when the houses are built. So it effectively goes into a pot which they collect from when it's built. So that's a school district decision, and the developer doesn't really have any say one way or the other. I mean, if they want to provide land, they can, but if the school districts say, well, we don't want land, we prefer fees, then that is also an option per the ordinance, the town's ordinance.
Is there an estimate on the total cash in lieu this would generate at build-out?
It's difficult because we don't know exactly what type of product. I can give you an estimate if it's all single family. I can give you kind of a kind of halfway house type. We can look at that and give you an estimate because we have done, I would say, a very preliminary breakdown of what it could be in terms of the types of unit, primarily to help the traffic study. So we could look at that and give a ballpark of what that would be, but right now I don't have that off the top of my head. Do you still have a question back, sir?
You kind of answered it. It was in regards to what triggered the 4-lane expansion south versus why your traffic study did not generate a expansion of 4 lanes. So you kind of answered it with the blending, of course.
Yeah.
But did your traffic study suggest a 4-lane expansion?
Well, I think the traffic study anticipates that Jackson Creek will be 4 lanes at some point, and it's a case of when those improvements will be triggered, and there will be different phases of development that will trigger different requirements. This gentleman here had a question, then you must.
I've served on land use committee for a school district, and nobody wants to give up land.
Yeah.
And right now, we need at least 3 elementary schools south of 105, 2 between Forest Lakes out there on 83 and 1 east of 83. That's by what's being built, not right now.
Yes, and that was part of the school district's strategic plan. This development in itself doesn't generate the estimates based on the number of units and the type of units is not going to generate enough children to support an elementary school in itself, so it would have to serve a broader area.
Yeah, but you've already built 600 house units to the east. These same landowners have built 600 of them.
East
of this perimeter.
I'm not sure what you mean, because this landowner has not built any houses to the east. They've only owned this land and land on the west side of I-25. So
Maybe it means the connexus that when you
brought it up to the town council? Because this, your company brought up the other
Yes,
side,
so
right?
Connexus is not residential though. Connexus was industrial.
Was there homes near there though? Maybe he's talking about that.
We did the Wagons West project, which is north of the ice rink. And that was about, I would say I think it was 120-ish homes. But that's on the west side, and that would probably be served by the new school at Willow Springs, Forest Way.
Grace Best,
Say again, sorry?
the Grace Best location.
Okay, yes, it would, Grace Best, yes, thank you. Yes, like I say, the school district has the option to ask the developer for land, and that was discussed last time we went through. We don't have quite as many residential units this time because we've given over 10 acres to commercial. So they haven't asked for school land. Like I say, they've developed their strategic plans since then, and they've identified where they want their schools. Do we have anything that's not school related?
It's school related.
Okay, go ahead then.
So what was the figure you said a little bit ago about for each home is expected to provide a certain number of dollars, roughly speaking, to go towards
There are,
school
so the fees in lieu of land are calculated based on the type of residential, single family detached, then you have single family attached together, you have townhomes, and you have multifamily. So there's a range, but the single family detached is $13.50 per residential unit.
Okay.
That's
So-
the
300 for multifamily.
So I guess what I'm thinking about is, given where we are now with what the community believes to be a shortage in adequate schools for the population that's already here, if these are the figures per house that we've been going with, and the district yet is not able to build a new school with their own internal funds, my question is, are those figures per house high enough to be able to account for the new schools that we'll need?
Well,
No.
that is a question that is what's in your town ordinance, and that would be a matter to discuss with your board of trustees. I mean, we are just bound by whatever's in the ordinance. The
Right.
same in any city of Colorado Springs, the county, they all have their specific fees, which they work out with the school district. That would be a matter to discuss with the school district or the board, but we are not in a position to change that fee as the developers. We just abide by what's in the
So
ordinance.
it would generate less than $1 million if every single one of the homes they built was single-family detached, which they will not be. And $1 million will not build the school.
And it's not intended that the money from this development will build a school, as I indicated, that is the fees are based on the likely number of children that will be generated from the development based on the different types of development. So single-family detached is assumed to have generate more school-aged children than a multi-family residential would.
Sure.
And that's how the land calculation is dealt the same way. It's regressive based on the type of unit, and similarly the fees are dealt in that manner. So there wouldn't, as I indicated before, the number of children that would be generated by this development wouldn't be enough to justify a school in its own right, but there would not be enough children for an elementary school from this one development. So similarly, the fees are not going to be paying for an entire school. The purpose is that the school district gathers fees from all these different developments, and then they, as a school district, decide, the school board, decide where they want the schools, where they need to go. So the developer really doesn't make those decisions, and it tends to be on a lot bigger developments. So I'm working on projects in the county, in the Springs, which are looking at nearly 3,000, 5,000 units, much larger developments. Those projects are dedicating land for schools, based on discussions with the school district, but smaller developments don't generally do that.
Can the city's representative answer that question?
Small, and they cover a large area.
But that's, I understand what you're saying, but that's a decision for the school board to make. A gentleman at the back and the lady in front of him.
Can the city's representative answer that question as far as the impact that changing this to commercial is going to have on the school district.
What happens when we collect the fees for the school district? We collect the fees once there's a permit given for each house, and once that house is built, we get those fees. And then we give the money from those houses that are built to the school district quarterly. So they can't give the money to the school district once we say this development's passed. We have to wait till each house is built and each permit is given to the city, and then we give the fees to the school district. So essentially, from this project and from other projects, eventually there'll be enough money for our school, but not at this point right now.
Enough money, but not land for this.
Yes, there is designated land right now that the school district has. It's next to Bear
The
Creek.
school district does not have land, I know.
The school
But they-
district does, there is land
They've got
dedicated at
one
Willow
piece.
Springs.
There's
Anyway,
land dedicated, so.
gentleman back, okay. Lady in front, you had a question.
Do you have an estimate for how many school-age students this whole development will produce?
We base it off the published information in the town's code, and they identify student generation based on the type of development. So I can give you an example, and like I say, we don't know what's going to be built here, so to give you an accurate, but it's like the lady asked about fees.
No,
We
I
could go, I can't do that calculation right here, right now, off the top of my head, but we can provide that information based on our estimates of the breakdown of units. But so, for example, here, it's published in the code, a single-family detached home is anticipated to generate, and these are the school district's figures, not ours, 0.318, I mean, they're very detailed, 0.318 students at elementary level per single-family home. For middle school, 0.152. For senior high, 0.188, and a total of 0.658 for one single-family home. And then that it goes into different categories. Single-family attached and mobile homes is the next category. Townhouse and multifamily. So and they decrease as they get more of a higher density because they tend to have less children. Now, whether these and I've had this discussion with the previous not the superintendent, the deputy, Cheryl, about how accurate, how...
She's
oh,
gone, she's
yeah,
gone.
she's gone.
You mean the CEO, the Chief Operating Officer,
Chief
Sorry.
Financial
Chief
Officer.
Financial Officer?
Have you talked with David
No,
Cruz?
it's the person's, it's a different person than when
Yeah,
you were
yes,
last.
I know that. I just said at the time we did this
Oh, okay.
previously, I was talking to Cheryl, and she, and we had a discussion about whether these figures need updating or whether they're accurate. That isn't our call to make, it's the school districts, and ordinances can be changed, updated. But that is the current estimate base that is in the code that we have to abide by. So this is on the city's website, the town's website, if you want to look at it further. But all the standards for land dedication and the number of students that will be generated and the number of fees that are payable in lieu are in this ordinance, in the municipal code. I don't really know which section it is, 1632.
Do you know when these figures are from? Like, when was this study done?
I actually don't, and I don't know whether these have been updated since their strategic plan was done.
There's an ordinance.
At the very end,
Yeah.
usually, yeah. Okay, so it looks like it was done in 2011. So it's a while ago. And they've just done their strategic plan, and they should have a better idea of what the generation is. So, you know, oh, there's no, that's it, 2011.
We're currently working on our land development code rewrite with our contractor, changing our code too and updating it to where it needs to be. And it's going to be a process. It's going to be a 1.5-year process. We've been there working with them for the last 4 months to update chapters 16 and 17 our land development code and our zoning code to make it more conform to what the town needs. But right now, we can't change it until we're done with the project, like for the ordinance.
So, I have a question then for you. So why is it that the town doesn't, like, put the brakes on accepting and approving new developments until this project is complete?
We can't legally do that. We have a code and we have have to abide by our current
I
code.
understand,
And
but
we
if you
can't
go
change
to
the code, we can't do anything until the code is changed.
Sure,
So
but-
legally, we have to abide by our current code.
But we don't have to rezone.
Yeah, we don't.
Exactly.
It's a residential, correct?
That's part of
Part of
the
the
project.
Yes, a part of the planning process is that it comes to the planning department. We do our job by reviewing it, by going off for a code or a comprehensive plan and other studies that we have. And we review the plans and and we go back to our client, the applicant, and we give them our comments and our referral comments. And then they make the changes they need to make. And then if they still don't want to make changes and they still want to go to the board will either approve it with conditions, or disapprove. So it goes to the planning commission, and then it goes to the board of trustees, and they make the last decision.
And bear in mind, if your comment related to school capacity, I will repeat, the school district has reviewed this and has decided that they want cash in lieu, they do not want land, and they are the elected officials who make that decision. And we don't make that decision, the town planning staff don't make that decision. The school board is a referral agency, and they say what they need in terms of school plan. Yes, ma'am.
Two really easy things. First, can we invite these folks to come in and have a seat?
Do you folks want to come in and have a seat?
Give
Go
them
ahead.
a moment, and then my other question is, can we get a copy of this presentation emailed to us?
Yeah, so as I left a few, we obviously didn't copy enough, but we will not only send out a PDF of this plan, we will send out a PDF of our very brief presentation for your information. But if you sign in and give us your email address in a legible manner, that will help. We will then put a mailing list together and we'll send you this information. And incidentally, everything we have submitted, including traffic reports, including a preliminary master drainage information, is all an economic analysis, which we're about to submit, is all of the town's files. So you can go and look. And is that on the website? That information?
That is
It's not. Okay.
just the information.
But the information about what the project is on the website, but you can go into the town and look at all that information.
You can always set up a meeting with myself or the planning director for us to go over any issues you may have, because we want your feedback too. This is where you live too. And we put those comments in our comments and we give it to the applicant as well, if it supports our comprehensive plan in our code, and we have to legally go by our code.
Can I clarify one thing? That entire piece of property is zoned commercial, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the only way to put a residence on any of that piece of property, it has to be rezoned to accept it, correct?
Yep.
The only person who can approve that is the Board of Trustees of Monument, is that correct?
Ultimately, yes.
Okay, end of story.
Yes. So they have the
That's
right,
it.
because as I said last time, 2015, they denied it because of the loss of commercial land.
Right.
Not because of they don't like the residential, it was simply the loss of sales tax from the commercial.
So it's the...
But we have produced a plan now that incorporates what we think is a reasonable compromise and a commercial that could actually be viable in this location. But yeah, I mean, the town staff makes a recommendation, the planning commission makes a recommendation,
And the voters vote for the board.
and the voters vote for the board,
Right.
yes. Okay, this lady here, you passed a few, and this lady here had a question, but she...
Just wondering, where are they going to get their water from?
So the water is Woodmore Water and Sanitation District. And they have provided a will serve letter. I mean, it's within their district, so they provide water and sanitation service to this site. Did they get back?
Do you know what the other districts are that are serving this land, the fire district,
It's
any
Tri-Lakes
metro
and Monument
districts?
Fire District. So all of these groups have been
Right.
part of the process. So Woodmore has reviewed it, so they have no comment at this point. Not really enough detail for them to comment on. Fire department have reviewed it and haven't made any comments.
Right, so there's Tri-Lakes Fire, Woodmore Water, Town of Monument, it's in Town of Monument.
It is in the town of Monument.
What other districts, library, school?
School district, District 38, library district I'm not familiar with. There is a nearby library just off, it doesn't get sent to the library district.
Do you want me to tell you who we send it to?
Sure.
I have the list right here. It's pretty long because we like to get comments from every jurisdiction that's near us. We sent it to El Paso County Development Services. We sent it to their public works, so they're planning and their engineering. We sent it to El Paso Teller County 911 for roads, for access roads and fire department so they know where to go. The school district. We sent it to NEPCO, which is the Northern El Paso County Coalition of HOAs. We sent it to the floodplain and enumerations. We sent it to the Chamber and to the Air Force Academy. We have a referral consultant through Jacobs Engineering that we sent it to. We sent it to Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Department, Monument Public Works, or CDOT, Black Hills Energy, Mountain View Electric Association, and Woodmore Water and Sanitation, and we sent it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So we have a lengthy referral list that we send every single project to. So, and we put those comments in the report that we give to our applicant every time.
And we have to respond to them.
Yes.
When you send the plan to them, what are you asking them to comment on?
On anything that they feel is necessary with their jurisdiction, their part, like the wildlife, if there's the mouse habitat in there, if there's a water issue, drainage issue, if there's a wetland issue in there, how would we build on there? And if there's going to be any issues, and they write reports. Andrea gives us reports from the drainage and soil samples to make sure that a development can be built on here. And they're looking to see access for roads for the fire department to see if there's any issues getting to someone if there's a fire. We look at the transportation issues and the planning department from the county looks at basically the same issues that we feel too with the road and the population size. And we look at the traffic study, which is very helpful, and the company that does it, very knowledgeable in studies. Every single project that we get basically comes from this company. They're very knowledgeable in traffic studies. And if we see an issue, they redo the whole study for us. And Andrea is going to be, NES is going to be giving us a new study with the issues that we looked at as well.
We keep going back to schools, but it could just very well be water or some other community impact. But I guess the question is when you ask for, say, the school district's comment on it, it appears that they're using planning factor figures from 2011 that may be updated. So is that updating the planning factors not part of that process? And how does that work?
What we ask for the school is to see the amount of density Andrea discussed, and if they would want land dedicated on this property or fees instead to help pay for a future school in another location within town that they do have land set out for to put a school on. As you all know, there was a voting last year for the school and it didn't get passed, but we're trying to get another school here in town. The town is not responsible for schools. They're not part of our jurisdiction. They're their own entity, so we have nothing to do with the schools. All we have to do for our part, for the town, is to ask them if they want land or cash for when a residential development comes. So it's up, I know the school district's been doing all their meetings and we're not part of the school district. They're on their own for that. We would like to be part of it, but it's not part of our job.
And as I think I've said, and you may be aware of this, I want to say it was like a couple of years ago, but the school district hired a consultant who specializes in analyzing school requirements, and they went through a very lengthy public process of talking to neighbours. I went to a couple of the meetings, getting them to vote on where they wanted schools. I don't know whether anybody participated in that, but it was a very lengthy process which resulted in a strategic plan which identified the locations where they want to have new schools. So the school district have gone through that lengthy process, so that's why they're not asking us for a school site in that location, because they've already determined where they want their schools. Now they just need the money to pay for them, and that's where the fees come in that we have to pay.
Who's asking for those fees?
The school district.
They're about a third of what Denver is, a third of Gainesville, a third of Texas. Comparable areas asking for about a third per square foot of what the rest of the country is asking.
So I wonder if those figures are outdated too.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
And these are all 2016 newer figures.
Yeah, yeah.
We can't change it.
I will make a meeting
Board can, once we're done over there, send it
possibly in the
Denver,
future, updating and doing a study on updating their fees.
so they can.
Do we have any questions? So I'm going to be kind of, because we've all got an evening, I think we'd like to enjoy the rest of. Can we just leave the school topic alone now? We've exhausted it, I feel. And let's ask, has anybody got questions about anything else about the project?
I do. I have a question, and it's also for the town and for residents of the town. We all know that we've got a mouse, Preble mouse habitat going on right by the I-25 interchange. Right now, there's a lot of congestion on Highway 105 and Jackson Creek. You've mentioned before that White Marble and Knollwood will not come through to Jackson Creek. And that's not part of the plan. But I wonder if maybe that would be better to help alleviate some of the congestion on 105 and Jackson Creek, because we can't really expand that because it is a protected habitat area. So
There's no habitat.
So this is the reason you have this very
Yes.
expensive on-ramp
Right.
arrangement here, because this is mouse habitat.
Yeah, and
that's why it's
people who've been
designed
in Mount
this-
Monument for a while, they
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we know about this mouse.
Yes.
I mean, you go way back, mouse. But I wonder if that were part of the plan, it might be more helpful for the fire department and.
Well, we do envision that if you come into the site here, that somehow you will be able to get onto Jackson Creek. It's just not going to be straight across. You'll probably be coming through here, doing a left turn, doing a right turn. So just to make it not attractive for cut-through, shortcutting. We, like I said originally, and I think the town have made it clear to us in the past and currently, that they would really like those connections to be more direct and to relieve some of the pressure off 105. But that traffic would come through this neighbourhood. And that neighbourhood was very clear that they were concerned about that level of traffic. So we decided that we would compromise, provide a connection but not direct, and just make it so that hopefully it benefits these neighbours to get this way more than it benefits anybody going this way who wants to avoid that light. Yes, sir.
At one time, Knollwood was shown going through to Jackson Creek on
Yes.
GPS. The people would come storming down that street 35 miles an hour, come to the end, turn around and go back at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They still do.
That's why
They still do. They still do.
Yeah.
No one.
I understand that. I think there's pros and cons. There's pros in terms of having better connectivity between neighbourhoods. I'm a planner, Debbie's a planner, that's what we believe in. You should try and connect things together so people can get from one place to the other easily. But there are other factors as well which we have to take into account. So like I say, we've tried to do an appropriate compromise.
Can I switch it to something else?
Sure.
In 2015, when they surveyed this land to do it the first time, the engineer come to me and asked about our retention ponds in Knollwood, in Monument Villas.
Yes.
And I said that, he said they weren't shown on his plans. Well, it turns out that they were city plans only, no, I'm sorry, they were not city plans. To start with, they were county plans because Monument Village was built to be a Whitmore South facility. And because the town took a loop of the Cipriano Circle out of our area, we wind up with north and south facing driveways that are only 5 feet long, and that didn't comply with Woodmore. So Monument says, we'll take it. And they grabbed onto us so that they could tax Jackson Creek. But anyway, we have a drainage thing to look at. Because when he come and looked at ours, he checked out our 2 retention ponds, and then he said, well, we're building to the east of Knollwood. What about that retention pond in the corner? I said, it's going to go away. He said, it can't go away, but it did go away.
Okay,
So now what's going to happen with the excess water?
So we have submitted a drainage report with this submittal, and we are required to contain all the runoff for this development in detention ponds, and also I'm looking at Cal Campbell, he's our civil engineer, who I might get to come and talk about this because he's a lot more knowledgeable than I am. But we've got to kind of take in off-site flows, anything coming into the site, anything produced from the site, detain it, and then reduce it at historic or less than historic rates. Did I get that right, Kyle?
There
Good
are
job. I've got
times
those
that
on
our
that.
retention ponds fill.
Yeah. Well, we can't. We're probably not going to fix the detention ponds in the other developments, but if anything comes off that development, we have to pick it up on our site, take everything from our site, detain it, and then release it to less than historic.
Our ponds were originally county, and Trinity Lutheran Church also drains into our pond.
Okay. Right. Well, all that's taken account in the drainage report. It's kind of an overview drainage report at this point, but again, when we get into more detailed development, specific recommendations will be made about where detention is required and what size the detention ponds need to be. And yes, ma'am.
So the landowner is trying to like sell off each little individual color then to...
Not necessarily. I mean, the landowner his objective is to rezone the property, and then it's possible that it could, all the eastern half could go to one builder or developer, and all the western half to somebody else. The commercial will probably be sold off separately.
So all of this trail stuff is not going to be built if he only sells off a few here and a few there. Who's building the trail?
The trail will be built as the development progresses. So each development will be responsible for their portion of the trail and the parks.
But the master plan will have a trail in it.
The master plan will have a trail in it, so there will be an obligation to do that. But the landowner really isn't going to develop anything. It will be then sold to a developer or to different developers, depending on how the commercial and the residential may be different. Excuse me, sir, there are people who have their hand up at the back. Yes, sir.
Is there any limit on the height of development on any of these areas?
I don't touch on that in the sketch plan. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think we actually have. That is something that we will certainly be addressing as we go forward. I would say a standard height for commercial zones and multifamily zones is 45 feet, which allows for usually three-story development. Single-family residential is usually in that 30, maybe 35 if it's the taller, skinnier stuff that's more popular now. But we're not proposing any really high-rise.
I just wonder about apartments. Some of those get really tall.
They do, but generally speaking, apartments don't go over 4 feet because then the construction requirements change. Yes, sir.
And those apartments, if there were to be apartments, they would be in the area in the brown.
Yes, in the brown area.
I believe maybe it would be
This area is raised up currently above 105, but to be honest, until we get into detailed development, we don't know how it's going to grade it. That could be flattened out, so it will be lower. I was kind of asked that earlier about the timeline. It's difficult to say because recessions can impact timelines, but developments of this size could be anywhere between 5 to 10, maybe even 15 years. With the market as it is right now, say 5 to 6 months, I'm not sure that's sustainable, but that would be a guess. Yes, ma'am.
On your slide up here, it has 14 acres of parks and trails.
Yes.
And at least on the east side of your development there, there's a 1.6 acre park for, on the conservative end, 175 homes.
Up here?
The other
No,
side, on the
This
right side.
Yeah.
That's for 175 homes, and the rest of that looks like it's a greenway or trail system only.
Yeah, and that's part of the, so we were asked specifically to do more of a trail system and kind of park nodes rather than have one centralized park. And we've assessed the park requirements against the town's ordinance in terms of what's required. And I believe we're meeting the standard. I can double check that, but we made sure that we were accumulating enough open space, primarily in the darker green areas, we didn't really count the lighter green areas, to meet that parkland requirement for the amount of residential on here. And I would anticipate as well potentially some smaller pocket parks in these areas here, just kind of depending on.
The biggest problem is we don't have space for kids to go out and play a soccer game or a football game. I would say most of the older kids in Monument commute to Castle Rock or to South Springs to have access to any kind of a park system or fields.
Right.
And it's one of the shortcomings in Monument. So when I look at this, I already know I commute both directions, 45 minutes each way to get my kids to an area where there's a place big enough to have middle school or high school activities.
And we've had discussions with the town about that very matter and about looking at other properties for that type of development.
One larger park would make, I think, be much more useful than smaller parks that are really patches of grass that
Yeah, and
can't do
that's
anything
interesting
on.
because there are different philosophies on that.
Sure.
Because the larger parks, if it's going to be a town park, it would be dedicated to the town as a park, then they would have to maintain it.
Sure.
Whereas these smaller areas tend to be easier for whatever
The
HOAs to
sure.
maintain, and it provides a different experience. But
Sure.
I understand you.
We don't have a big park experience in Monument anyway.
Okay.
I'm sorry? There's a baseball field and you can get one soccer practice on it at a time. I mean, there's, it's not even, you can't hold a high school practice or anything else. I'm just talking about something where you could put two soccer fields side by side, or, I mean, even for the high schools, we have to outsource to have tournaments. We don't have anything up here where we can host a tournament or.
Yes, sir.
Do you still plan on having a metro district for this?
We may for the any infrastructure needs to provide. I think it will depend on how it gets sold to developers, whether they want a metro district to deal with covenants or they want their own HOAs. But quite often a metro district is put in place to develop the infrastructure for the development. But it won't be a metro district like Triview, or it won't be providing utility services. It would be just a bonding mechanism to generate the funds to provide the upfront and some of the.
So you're anticipating the HOA paying to maintain these?
It could,
these
so the parks, so it could be either an HOA or a metro district. That I would say that mechanism has not been determined yet at this higher level.
Originally, in your previous presentation, I think you had that lower area in the pale color. That was going to be a field there, wasn't it?
It was. We had a buffer, and we've reduced the buffer, and then put lower density here. So.
But you were going to have a baseball park or something like that.
No, it was just going to be a kind of a park. I wouldn't say it was ever planned to be a programmed park, as this lady was suggesting, with baseball fields and soccer
But it was
fields.
going to be a park, a large area.
Yeah, instead of having this kind of distribution. Can you go back one slide? We had a park here, but we had a larger area.
Yes.
And there's drainage going through here as well. So we're still maintaining the drainage part of it as a buffer. But we, instead of having this higher density here, we put in, if you go back to the lower density.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
So I should say that that area at the bottom there previously had never really been intended to
Good to
be
see you.
all fields because of the drainage going through it. It's more helpful. Any other questions before we wrap it up here? Okay, well, thank you everybody very much for coming. We really appreciate you turning out on this very nasty evening. Please, again, as emphasized, please sign in. Leave us particularly your email address. I'm probably not going to call you up, but I'll probably email you. And make sure it's legible. One last question.
What's the next step?
Okay, sorry, just 1 second, please, everybody. Very, very good question. Where do we go from here? Our next step is we are resubmitting to the town probably tomorrow with addressing their comments. They have our review. Our goal is to get to Planning Commission on March 11th, and then to the Board of Trustees April 6th. So that's our schedule right now. Could that change? Yes, if we haven't adequately addressed the comments, but that's our goal right now. So you will be notified. So we will, if we're going to make that, we will be sending notification out no later than Tuesday next week. So if you're within that 500-foot buffer, if you actually got a letter from us, because you're within the 500 feet, then you'll be getting another letter notifying you of the dates for the hearings.
And on the website, we always have our agenda, what's going to be on it.
Thank you, everybody.